Hello everyone. So right now we are on the topic of gears. So the application of gears, I think most of us know most of the application of gears, right? In automotive industries, in your bicycle, even in your JCBs, your cars, bikes, and then machines, lathe machine, and so many places you have the applications. So today we wish to classify the gears based on what are they classified. Okay, so let's check out the classification of gears. So basis of what are we going to classify the gears? So on basis of relative orientation of the axis of the shafts. It means how are the axis of the shafts being oriented, right? So classification basis of orientation of the shaft. Orientation, or we can say position of the shaft. Of shaft. So you have usually, if you look at here, let's say this is gear number one, axis of gear number one, and then we have this gear, fine, and then you have axis of gear number two, and let's give another coloring for the gears, right? So axis is yellow and gear is your red color here, and then you have a blue color gear. Yes, let's say the sizes are different of both the gears. One is having a little smaller diameter, other is having a little larger diameter, and these shafts will be mounted in bearings, right? So here you have a fixed portion where there are bearings and the shaft can rotate freely. Fine. So now how are the shafts oriented? If you look at carefully, the shafts are actually oriented parallel to each other. Here the shafts are oriented parallel to each other and they are in the same plane if you see. Okay. And you can see that this is the upper gear. These are the teeth of the gear. And you have the bigger gear, smaller gear and the bigger gear. These are the teeth. Fine. So this type of arrangement is called as spur gears. This type of arrangement is called as spur gears. So these gears are called as, let me write it down, spur gears. And whenever we study about gear, we say that the action is similar to action of pure rolling. Action of pure rolling means, see over here, you have two gears, right? Gear number one and gear number two. Let's say that this is the axis of the gear, axis of first gear, axis of second gear. Okay, so axis one and axis of second gear. So now over here we say that the action will be similar to pure rolling. Means what? The rolling is without slipping. It means at the point of contact of the gear, this is the point of contact of the gear, right? So at this point of contact of the gear, the velocity of gear 1 will be equal to the velocity of gear 2. Fine. So gear 2 has a velocity and gear 1 has another velocity, right? So if you see, I'll just show it in the sidewards. Over here I'll show it. So this is the smaller gear, this is the larger gear. Fine. This is some other view which we are showing over here. Okay, I'll use the same colors. So this is the smaller gear, let's say, and this is the larger gear. Fine. And the centers of the shafts are in a line, in the same line. So this is the shaft, this is the shaft center, this is the shaft center. You can't see in this view, right? You're looking from the side. For example, you're looking from the side of the, yes, you're looking from the side. Fine. When you're looking from the side, you see it in this manner. So here we say that this is the point of contact, right? This is the point of contact. If the gear is rotating in anti-clockwise way, so how will the motion of this point be? This point motion will be in this direction, right? So imagine that the lower gear also is having the same motion, right? So how will you get the same direction of the velocity in the lower gears? Whenever you rotate it in this manner, right? Only then this point will be shifting towards right. So this this is the rolling without slipping. The meaning of rolling without slipping is what? At the point of contact, you have the same velocity v. Okay, even if you consider it on gear 1 or you consider the point on gear 2. Fine. So this point will have same velocity. So you can see that if this gear is rotating, the one gear is rotating anti-clockwise, the second gear will be rotating clockwise. Fine. So this direction is changing. So this is about the gears which are in parallel and which are called as spur gears. Okay. So now we'll go to the next way how we are going to check about this gear. See, means the classification of the gear. And the next gear is where the axis intersect. Fine. What is happening? The axis is intersecting. So let's say that I'm first drawing the axis so that it will be convenient for us to draw the image later. So this is an imaginary line. So you check the axis should actually intersect, right? So let's say these are the axis of two shafts. Fine. And now I'm going to draw the gears, how the gears are going to look. Fine. So now parallel to the axis, first this one, and then parallel to the axis, then next one. So this is one gear, and then you have another gear over here. Yes, one is looking very small, right? One is looking large. Okay, that is the way it looks. Fine. So this is the axis of the gear, and then we draw the gear itself. I have drawn this gear a little larger, the lower gear. Fine. Yes. So these two gears are in contact, and the teeth. Check the teeth. Okay, and this red gear. Right. So this is the way the gears are going to be oriented. So these type of gears where the axis of the shafts intersect. Let me draw the axis of the shaft also. So this is the shaft. Fine. And here for this gear, you can see that this is the shaft of the gear. Fine. Now where they intersect. Okay. Where this is like a cone, right? Just imagine a conical cylinder. Like it is cut, a conical cylinder. This is a disc which you see, and if you imagine a conical cylinder, it is going to extend further, right? Just imagine a conical cylinder. See, every surface will meet at the conic section, sorry, at the apex. This is called apex or vertex of a cone, right? Even over here, if you just extend it, this is going to meet at this point, right? This is going to meet at this point on the same line. So these type of gears, fine, which you see in the dark, this is gear 1 and gear 2. Let's say this is gear 1 or axis 1 and axis 2. Axis 2. Fine. So these type of gears are called as bevel gears. So these type of gears are called what? Bevel gears, where the axis intersect. bevel gears. And in bevel gears, you have a special case. In bevel gears, you have a special gears, and that special case is called meter gear. Okay, how is that meter gear? Wherever the axes are intersecting, right? Axes are definitely intersecting. So let's see how they look. How are they going to look? Yes, this is one gear, and then we have the second gear like this. This is the second gear. Now if you see over here, this is the axis of shaft 1, right? And this is the axis of shaft 2. So this shaft, if you extend, they are going to intersect. So this type of gearing is called as bevel gearing. Fine, this type of gears are called as bevel gearing. In bevel gearing, they are a special case. Fine, and it is called as meter gear. So these are the teeth, and here also these are the teeth. Okay, so this is called as what gear? Meter gear. This gear special case, this special case. So it's a special case, and it's called as meter gear. Done. And we are going to get into the next class, next way of gears, where the axes are neither parallel nor intersecting. So in this first case, what do you see here? In the first case, you see that the axes are parallel, right? So here the axes are parallel. I'll just write it down here itself instead of going to the next page. Axes are parallel. Here axes are intersecting. So now I'm going to explain in the last box another type of gear. For that, we need some reference points, and let me try to complete the reference diagram. Okay, now we have to just I have created a box over here. The reason is for reference purpose. Okay, now imagine there are two planes, right? Top plane, top face, bottom face of this cube, right? Top face, bottom face. So on the top face, you imagine one shaft. See, this shaft is on the top face. Just imagine that this shaft is on the top face. Done. I'll just draw it a line as a line. Okay, imagine that this shaft is on the top face, and you have another shaft which is on the bottom face. See, if this was the case, top face, bottom face, even if it is on the top face and bottom face, if this was the case, then it would be like parallel shafts, right? But I'm not making it parallel. I'm going to make it a little inclined. Okay, see this case. On the bottom shaft, you have this shaft, other shaft. So this shaft is on the bottom face. So now, are they parallel? Are they parallel? No, they are on different planes. Just imagine one, you can place a hand on bottom and then place your hand on top parallel to each other. Then you try to tilt the upper arm a little bit, though they are in parallel planes, but these will never intersect, as well as these shafts are not parallel to each other. So here the case is not parallel, not intersecting. So this type of gears we have, and these type of gears are called as skew gears. Okay, let's just try to draw this diagram, how this is going to look. So the plane itself is different, right? So you can see that. So this is gear 1. Fine. And then you have gear 2. gear 2, right? I hope you can imagine that it is a little tilted, right? Usually the face of the gear, it means this is the face. It is perpendicular to the shaft, right? You can imagine right now. Yes or no? Yes. So this is called a skew gear. Okay. Here what? Axis are neither parallel nor intersecting. Okay, neither parallel nor intersecting. So this is the case over here, and these are called as what? These are called as skew gears. Okay, the above gear is called skew gears, and there is a special case even in skew gears. Okay, where the shafts look to be like, you'll just see perpendicular to each other. See, this is a gear. Just imagine this is a gear, and then you have axis of the gear. I'll just draw it like a line. Axis of the gear is this one, and then you have another gear. Another gear. Yes. So this is our another gear. Yeah, you can see clearly, right? Yes. So this is the axis of the shaft. How are the shafts? So one shaft you can see, right? The shaft is actually horizontal on gear axis. One is horizontal, axis 2 is perpendicular to it, axis 2 is perpendicular to it in a different plane. Okay, if you just relatively, if you check, if you take this white color axis down, then they will seem to be intersecting. Actually, they are not intersecting. These are neither parallel nor intersecting. And this is a special case where these gears are called as spiral gears. These gears are called as spiral gears. So the name of the special case in skew gears, it comes under skew gears, and these are called spiral gears. And if you check, if there are thread type of system, okay, these are spiral gears originally, and if you have a thread type of system like this on the gear itself, complete, this complete is like a shaft, and there is a thread, and this gear is in contact over here. Okay, this is called worm and worm wheel. So it is a part of skew gear itself. So worm and worm wheel gears also come under skew gears, and the orientation is similar like this. The shafts are seeming to be perpendicular in different planes. Fine. So worm and worm wheel also is an example and an exceptional case of skew gears. So you have to remember that one point. So here we have covered classification on basis of position or orientation of the shafts. It means based on look of the shafts, how they are going to be classified. So now we come to the classification based on, now next one, orientation of the teeth. Okay, based on the orientation of the teeth or how the teeth are. So based on that also we have classification. So I'll just write it down. Classification based on orientation of teeth on the gears. We have teeth on the gears, right? So based on orientation also we have classification. So right now let's start with the classification, right? So see, this is your gear. Little bit big, let's draw it. Okay. Mm. Okay. Yes. So this is your gear, and how are the teeth oriented? Based on that also you have classification done. Okay. So if you check, let's say that this is your shaft of the gear. Done. Okay. So now if the teeth are parallel to the shaft, orientation of the shaft, if the teeth are parallel to the shaft, it means see your shaft is like that, right? So if the teeth are parallel to the shaft, so these type of gears are called as spur gears. Okay, this is a spur gear actually. Okay, so these are having straight tooth. These are having straight teeth. Okay, and this is an example of spur gear. Fine, usually spur gear. So in spur gear, the first thing is you should have shafts parallel and teeth also might be parallel. Okay, so it might be in any gears. So let's just write down based on the orientation of teeth. Then the next one you'll have is, this is a type of, yeah, okay. Just give me a moment to complete the drawing. Okay, yes. So let's say that this is your gear wheel, and then here you have the teeth a little bit inclined to the surface. They are not parallel, sorry, they are inclined to the angle of the shaft. They are not actually like parallel to the shaft. These teeth are inclined. Fine. So these are called helical gears. Helical gears. The shaft is, sorry, the teeth is not parallel to the axis of the shaft, whereas the teeth is inclined. Fine. So these are called helical gears. You all must have already heard about this helical gears. So now there is another classification in this helical itself. We have an improvement, okay, a modification in helical gear itself. So that right now we are going to show in the next diagram. This is first gear, this is the second gear, done. And then we'll have to, yeah, okay. And we have to draw a midsection. Guys, this is the mid. Let's say that this is the middle of that gear and this gear. Yes. This drawing takes a little bit of time. Just have patience. We'll complete it very soon. Okay. So now see, this is our gear. Actually, it's a single wheel now. What we are going to do is we are going to give the same type of, yes, mirror image. See, first you had this, right? First you had this helical gear, right? Helical gear with same angle. Yes. So similar to that, we have mirror image on this side. This is the mirror image. So this type of gear is called a double helical gear. Double helical gear. Fine. Or herringbone gear. Herringbone gear. Fine. It has two names, double helical or herringbone gear. Fine. And you have even the shaft axis, right? So this is the shaft axis. Double helical or herringbone gear. So these are based on the tooth. These are the only three things we are going to study based on the orientation of the tooth. And next we have one more type, which is the external versus internal gearings. Okay, external as well as internal. So first we'll study about the external gearing. See, we have this gear 1, fine, and then we have gear 2. These are in contact, right? Both the teeth, both the gears are externally in connection with each other. So this is 1 and 2. So if I give an input of this direction, where will be the velocity at the point of contact? It will be in this direction, right? So velocity at the point of contact will be in this direction. It means the the red gear, the bigger gear should rotate in this direction. Fine. Just first you mark one of the rotations. This is the easy way to understand. See, mark one of the rotations and then check if this point is going in which direction. Then you can check the other gear and make it in the same direction. So you can see that both the gears are having opposite sense of rotation. If this is input and this is output, so input to output, the sense of rotation is changed. The sense of rotation is changed, right? So this is called as external gearing. So this gearing is called external gears. And then we have one more case where you have gear 1, right? Let's say this is gear 1, the smaller gear, and then you have a larger gear. Okay, so gear 1 is inside the gear 2 and teeth will be inside, guys. Just imagine the teeth on the red gear is inside, internal teeth, and on the blue gear it is external teeth. Okay, so let's mark the center of this. So this is the center, and now here this is the center. Now imagine how the rotation will be there if I am giving the blue gear clockwise rotation. So what did I say? We have to imagine a point, right, at the point of contact. So which direction? This direction. So now the red gear also should rotate in the clockwise direction. Fine, red gear also should rotate in the clockwise direction. Here the sense of rotation is not changed. Here the sense of rotation isn't changed. Fine. So this is your internal gear. Fine. So this is internal gears. Let's separate. These are different, right? So this classification based on teeth is only for this direction. Okay, this is different. So let's make it correct. Let's correct it. Classification based on orientation is only for the half of it, not complete it. Complete. Okay. So okay. So let me write it down. Classification based on teeth orientation. Done. Yes. And here you have based on the is it external or internal. And when you come to the next and last thing is It's a special case where you can see that there is a flat gear, there is a flat gear, and above it you see a disc type, means or normal gear, where the contact is taking place. Okay, of course they'll have teeth on each. So this type of gearing is called rack and pinion arrangement. Okay, this type of gearing is called rack and pinion arrangement. I'll just show you how the motion is taking place. Okay, so this is your fixed surface. The surface is down ground, and on the top you can see that the red one is a rack. This is called rack, and the yellow one is pinion. Rack and pinion arrangement. Suppose the pinion is rotating this direction clockwise. So imagine the arrow, right? The direction at the point of contact is this, and here you'll have pure rolling action, pure rolling. If that rack and pinion between them you are having at the point of contact pure rolling, then this is going to happen. So here pinion also is going to go in the same direction with the same velocity, same direction, same velocity. So if I say, if I want to write an equation, if you say that this is the velocity of pinion and this is the velocity of rack, I will say that Vp is equal to Vr. It means velocity of rack will be equal to velocity at pinion at the point of contact. Okay, special case arrangement is what? Rack and pinion arrangement. These are called rack and pinion gears. Let us write it down clearly. Rack and pinion gears. So this is about our introduction, students, and classification on gears. So in continuation, now we are going to study about a case right now. Okay, just imagine that you have two discs. This is disc 1 and this is disc 2. And guys, actually gears were even called as friction discs. Okay, disc with some friction. Okay, so let's say that we have two discs and these discs are having pure rolling action. Okay, this is the center of the disc and this is fixed. You have a shaft inside and this is the center of this gear or disc, and that is the shaft. Okay, so now if these two discs were in rolling without slipping condition, okay, just imagine that they are rolling without slipping. Fine, and the direction we can say that, okay, this is the direction, let's say. So what is the meaning of this? If the direction is this way, directly you can say, right? So this is rotating in this direction and the blue gear is rotating in this direction, right? So if this is the condition and if this is rotating with omega 2 and this is rotating with omega 3 angular velocity, let's say this is gear 2, gear 2, gear 3, other one, gear 3. What is 1? 1 is the shaft. Fixed is always 1, right? So they are taking the 1 is the fixed surface or fixed place is 1 and remaining are gear 2 and gear 3. Just given the names gear 2 and gear 3. Fine. It has omega 2, angular velocity omega 2 of gear 3, right? Angular velocity of omega 3 of gear 3. Okay, omega 3, omega 2. Now, how do we usually find out the velocity V? Velocity V is R omega. Usually we know, right? V is equal to R omega, right? So now what is R? R is the distance from the center. Distance from the center to the point of contact. See, of this gear, I can say that. Let's change the color so that we can identify. Fine, I'm taking a red to identify the center from here to here. So the center is R2 and the other center is, let's say, and it should be perpendicular to V. Okay, you have to drop a line on this point such that, see, usually radius and common tangent is perpendicular. You can say this is the common tangent of these two circles. What the V direction is common tangent to both the circles, and this is the common normal also of both the circles. What line joining the centers? Line joining the centers is a common normal also you can say. So this is R3 radius. So what can I say if I want to write V? See, this V is same, right? Whether considered, see, V whether considered on body 3 or a part of body 3 will be equal to V if you consider the V of a part of body 2. It means even if if you consider this V is the common point, right? You can consider on yellow gear or you can consider it on blue gear. Their velocities will be same because we are considering pure rolling case. Pure rolling case. Fine. So now V3 equal to V2. What is V3 if you consider it? V3 is R3 because V equal to R omega, right? Into omega 3. And if you consider the yellow gear, V2 is what? R2 omega 2. Now if I see that omega 3 by omega 2, I am getting a fixed value, right? Cross multiplied. Am I getting a fixed value? Yes. What is the significance of this fixed value? It is called constant velocity ratio. Because see, omega 3 is angular velocity of link 3 or gear 3. See, omega 2 and omega 3 are angular velocities. I'll just write down. Omega 3, omega 2 are angular velocities. Now, what is the significance of this is, I'll just show it here. So if I take omega 3 is equal to just cross multiply omega 2 multiplied by R2 by R3, right? Just cross multiply it. So now if you check over here, what is going to happen? Suppose R2 and R3 are known. Yes. See, if you get gears from the market, so the radius are fixed, right? If you want 10 mm, if you say that I want 100 radius and then 150 radius, two different gears, or 100 and 300 two gears. So let's say that R2 is equal to, okay, I'll just write it on there itself. Why to write in different places? Let's say let R2 is equal to 100, R3 is equal to 300 units. Okay, units you take or whatever you want. I'm just taking the value. So what is R2 by R3? I found that R2 by R3 is equal to 1 by 3, right? This ratio. Now, if I'm starting to give the angular velocity, if the input angular velocity, if omega 2 is given as 20 rpm. See, I can even write in terms of rpm because they are ratios, right? I can write n2 here instead of omega 2. I can write n2. See, I'll say why. See, omega 3 by omega 2 is equal to, for example, I have 3 radians per second by 2 radians per second. Okay, this radiant per second and radiant per second will get cancelled out, so no units. Fine, they don't have any units. So if I take n3 by n2 rpm, right? So let's say it is 300 rpm and 200 rpm. So rpm gets cancelled out, and this also get 3 by 2. Still it is 3 by 2 ratio. Fine, so I can write it in terms of n2 or omega 2. They are same. Fine, so I can write omega 2 is 20 rpm and find out omega 3. So what will I get? Omega 3 will be like 20 multiplied by 1 by 3. Yes, so omega 3 will be equal to, just put it in the values, we'll come to know. So it is 6.66, right? 6.66. So 6.66 rpm is for omega 3 and it's a fixed value. It means for a fixed rpm you are getting a fixed, for a fixed input you are getting a fixed output, or for a constant input you are getting constant output. I can take, see, if omega 2 is equal to 30 rpm. So what is omega 3? Can you predict or not? Immediately you will say, because you have the ratio. So you will say it is 30 by 3, 30 by 3. So you will say it is 10 rpm omega 3. So for a fixed input, you are getting a fixed output, or for a constant input, you are getting a constant output. That's why it is called what? Constant angular velocity ratio. Through this setup, you are getting what? Constant angular velocity ratio. Because See, omega 3 is equal to omega 2 multiplied by R2 by R3. And what is constant over here? So this value is constant because this radius cannot change while the gears are in motion. So it is constant or fixed. So this way you are getting what? Constant angular velocity ratio, because omega 3 by omega 2 also is fixed, right? So if R2 by R3 is fixed, omega 3 by omega 2 is also fixed. It means for different RPM, we'll get a different fixed value. In gears, see, for a specific RPM, you are getting a specific result. That is the thing. So for 20 RPM, you are getting 6.66 RPM. For 30 RPM, you are getting 10 RPM. Similarly, for 60 RPM, you will get 20 RPM, right? So that way. So that is the way this is going to happen. But is this case really possible? Is this case really possible? I would say that this case is impossible, because see, friction gears. If you have friction gears, it means just friction on two discs. Is pure rolling without slipping possible? No, because as they are rolling in the beginning, it might be possible, but the wear and tear is going to happen. The surface is going to wear off. Once it wear offs, the velocities will be different. Okay, so omega 2 will be the ratio can't be constant because there is no friction, right? See, once the surface friction is gone over here, so this might be only rotating here but not turning this gear. Okay, I'll give you an example on this. Fine, I'll give you an example over here. For example, you have your bike. In your bike you have a gear, right? Small gear which will rotate the larger gear. Small gear which is going to rotate the larger gear. So this is coming from the engine. Fine, this is the gear which is needs to be rotated. Now on this gear, what are the loads? On this gear you have loads like you have a big bike. I'm not a good artist, please don't judge me by my drawings. This is the seat. Fine, seat. And then you have wheels, and then you have a person sitting here and here, two people sitting, right? And this is your handle, big handle, and this is your front wheel, then you have a back wheel. Fine, so now this gear, larger gear, has to take the load of the entire vehicle, right? The entire vehicle's load is there on this large gear. The entire load of you people is there on this large gear. Now if this small gear turns the large gear using just a disc, there are no teeth and all. Just don't imagine teeth are there now. For now there are no teeth, it's only a disc with some friction. So what will happen to this gear? Immediately after maybe one turn, or maybe it won't be able to turn also, this friction will be weared out, and the smaller gear will be continuously rotating there itself, but the larger gear will be looking at it and saying, acha, theek hai, you continuously rotate, I'm not going to rotate because there's a lot of load. There's a lot of load. Yes, I need some teeth. I need some teeth so that I transmit the load and transmit the torque, so that I can generate the torque so that the vehicle can move forward. Yes, that small gear needs some teeth. The larger gear needs some teeth. So now, is it possible if we keep a teeth to happen rolling without slipping case? Yes. So now we have to check for teeth where rolling without slipping can happen. Okay, that's our next target. So we are going to check it in the next slide. So in this case, we are going to just assume two surfaces, and we want to check for if there is a possibility of having constant angular velocity ratio, even though if there is slipping in gears. Okay, even though if there is slipping in gears, is it possible to have a constant angular velocity ratio, right? Let's say I'm just pointing the centers of the teeth, sorry, centers of the surfaces for now, and then we will draw the surfaces. Fine, let's say that this is one surface, and we are going to have this is another surface of the, yes. So we are only checking for this instant, don't be confused. We are checking for this instant how it is going to behave. Fine, so here you have the point of contact of two surfaces. This is the center. Okay, and give me a minute. We are going to derive it very beautifully. Let me take this distance a little more further. Okay. Okay, let's say that this is your another teeth. Just carefully listen. Okay, this is the entire basis of our gears. If you understand this, it's very easy to understand the complete gear system. Fine. I just drew a line connecting the point of contact as well as the center of the surface. Okay, about which it is rotating. So that is the first thing which we did. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to find out the velocities. We are going to find out how the velocity is usually perpendicular to the line, right? Perpendicular to the line joining. It means I'll make you understand. Just see. So this is perpendicular to, I think you can see this is perpendicular to the blue link, right? This is perpendicular arrow to the blue link, and then that is the direction of the velocity of the blue link. Okay, and then I'm going to draw perpendicular to the yellow link also. We are going to draw the perpendicular to the yellow link also. So we can see that this is perpendicular to the yellow link also. Okay, yes, it looks perpendicular enough. Right, fine. So this is velocity of link 2. Let's say this is 2 and this is 3, body 3 and body 2. Okay, and this is velocity of body 3. Fine. In this direction, you are having the velocities. The velocities are actually perpendicular, right? Perpendicular to the motion, perpendicular to the link itself. So we are considering this as one link and this as another link, and we are drawing perpendiculars. So now we need to know that, see, if two bodies are in contact with each other, can they be collided into each other? It means, so you have, this is body 1 and this is body 2. Okay, and they need to move properly and they need to maintain contact, so they can have can they actually be separated? If they are, see, if they are having motion in this direction, they are separated, right? See, if this is going up and this is also, if see, this is the body, this is the body, if this is going up, this is also going up. If this is going, the top body is going up with 2 meters per second, the bottom body, if it's going with 1 meter per second, will they be separated or not? Just imagine two cars. One car is going with 2 meters per second, another car is going with 1 meter per second. Will they have some difference in distance or not? Yes. So is there a contact? No. But if two cars, they are back to back attached, and this is also going with 2 meters per second, this is also going with 2 meters per second, are they having same relative velocity? Yes or no? Yes, they are having same relative velocity. Now another case, if this car is going with 2 meters per second, but this car is going with 3 meters per second, when they are at point of contact, what will happen? This behind car will push into this. Yes, see, there is a constraint. This should go at 2 meters per second. It cannot be pushed further. But if that is the constraint, what will happen? This lower car will be inside the upper car. Yes. So now what is the condition if they are in contact? See, this is a called common normal. This is called common normal. Common normal. See, you drew normal in this way only, right? When we were studying friction and all, this is a normal force. So at the point of contact, two surfaces, right, are horizontal, this will be the common normal. But if two surfaces are curved motion, in a curved position, what will happen is, first you draw a tangent to it, then draw a perpendicular to tangent. This is called common normal. So I say that in higher pairs, along the common normal, there cannot be difference in velocity or motion. Okay, see, along the common normal, there cannot be any difference. If there is difference, the connection is lost. But along the common tangent, can there be difference? Yes, along the common tangent, if there is a difference, it will just slip. That's why that we call as slipping. Okay, slipping is along the common tangent. If you have a difference in velocities, that is called what? Slipping. But along the common normal, you cannot have velocities different. If the velocities are different, either they will be separated or they will collide into each other. Okay, so now I need to draw a common normal for these both surfaces. So for that, let's say that instead of making it more and more clumsy, I'll just imagine, say this is the common tangent. I'm going to draw perpendicular to it. So if you draw perpendicular to it, say that you have a common normal. I'll just draw it with some other ink for clear visibility. Let's say that, see guys, let's say that this is our common normal. Okay, it looks also like a common normal. Fine. At the point of contact, draw a common tangent to both the surfaces, then draw a perpendicular to it. That is common normal at the point of contact. So it is common normal at the point of contact. So what did I say? At the point of contact, see, important point, at the point of contact, both the surfaces should have same velocity. It means at the point of contact, both the surfaces should have the same velocity. See, at the point of contact, I have V2. At the point of contact, I have V3. So what do I do right now is, along the common normal, same velocity along the common normal. Where is common normal? See, along the common normal means with this. So I can see that V2 has a component and V3 has a component. These components should be same. That is the meaning. Okay. V2 component on the common normal should be equal to V3 component on the common normal. So now first we have to decide the angles, right? So the angle with respect to the common normal. We should know the angles with respect to the common normal. Fine. Let's say that this blue link has an angle of, this blue link has an angle of theta with the common normal, and the other one, which is the yellow link, has the angle of phi with respect to common normal. Okay, so now what can I write in this case? I can write that both the velocities along the common normal need to be same, right? So it will be V2 cos phi is equal to V3 cos theta. Sir, how are you writing all these things? See, you can see this one, right? So this is, for example, V2. So we need to drop a perpendicular over here for the component, and this is phi. Okay, so I can say that V2, I can say cos phi is equal to adjacent side by hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is V2. So I can say adjacent side is the common thing, right? Adjacent side is the common thing which we are checking. Fine. So this adjacent side is V2 cos phi, right? Adjacent side is V2 cos phi. So this cos phi should be equal to that cos theta. V2 cos phi is equal to V3 cos theta. So that is the condition right now which we got, which we found. Fine. So, but what is V2? What is V2? V2 is, you can check. See, this is omega 3, right? And this yellow link, you can see that as omega 2. Okay. Hope you understood how I wrote this omega 3 and omega 2 based on the direction of the velocities. Okay, based on the direction of velocities, I wrote omega 3 and omega 2. So now can I write V2 is omega 2 into R2? Yes, R2 is the distance here. R1 and R2 have not mentioned, but I think you understand what R1 and R2 is. Instead of writing R1 and R2, let's give the names O, B, right, and C. I can write down V2 is omega 2 into BC, right? BC is the distance, radial distance, and omega 3 into OB. Sorry, little lower because space is not sufficient on the top. I'll just write down here omega 2 into R2. Sorry, instead of R2, just write down O, B, C. So instead of omega 2 into BC, cos phi will be equal to omega 3 into OB cos theta. Okay, so this is the way which we can write the values. But over here, can you see any constant? Like if I write omega 3 by omega 2, BC by OB, BC, OB, okay, they are constant. But cos phi, cos theta, the phi angle is continuously changing, yes or no? If this disk is rotating, the phi angle also will change because the point of contact will change, right? So these all things are going to happen. So how do I get a constant value? So that is the question. So how do I get a constant value? So what we are going to do next is I am going to drop perpendiculars. I am going to drop a perpendicular on this line, okay, on the common normal. Perpendicular to common normal, I'm going to drop a line. So this looks perpendicular enough, right? Pretty perpendicular. And here also I'm going to drop a perpendicular line. Fine. And I'm going to mention that this is perpendicular. Fine. And here this is perpendicular. So now, and what is the angle over here? Can anyone just see the angle over here and angle over here? See, I will say, see, suppose this line is perpendicular to this line, right? For example, this line is perpendicular to this line, and I have this contact over here, and to this line, this is perpendicular. So whatever angle, see, this is perpendicular and this is perpendicular. Fine. This is perpendicular and this is, so whatever angle I have here, I'll have the same angle over here. Fine. So I'll have the same angle over here. So it's like, see, this is horizontal, this is perpendicular, for example. Fine. So this angle over here, see, whatever angle we have with respect to vertical to the inclination, the same angle will have with respect to horizontal over here, the same angle. See, these two are perpendicular. These two are perpendicular. Whatever angle I have here, I'll have over here. So perpendicular to a perpendicular, it's a type of perpendicular to a perpendicular. If I have theta over here, I'll have theta over here. If I have phi over here, I'll have phi over here. So similarly here, if you check this blue link, okay, it's making with this common normal theta. So perpendicular to common normal here also it will be theta. So here yellow link, with respect to common normal, it's making phi. So perpendicular to it here also it will make phi, right? So now what is OB? What is OB and what is BC? Let's check first OB. OB, I can say that let's name this point over here wherever it cut, right? Cut the axis of common normal. Let's name this point as G, and let's name this point of K over here on the top. So I can say that this is perpendicular, right? Instead of BC, OB, I'll now consider BC or OB. Okay, consider. Okay, let's go with OB. OB is hypotenuse, right, of the triangle. So this is adjacent side. OG is adjacent. Adjacent by hypotenuse is cos theta, right? Yes. So cos theta is adjacent by hypotenuse. Fine. So I can write down cos theta is equal to OG by OB. So OB cancelled. So I got OG, right? OG over here. Just substitute the value of OB. OB is equal to OG by cos theta. Similarly, even on the top, you can say it is CK or KC. So I can say cos phi is equal to KC divided by BC. So what is BC? BC is equal to KC by cos phi. So I can write here omega 2 into BC is equal to KC by cos phi into cos phi. So cos got cancelled. You can see that the angle got cancelled. It means we have a good news, right? So what is you can write down, yeah, here to cancel out cos theta. So write down OG by OB into OB, what was already present. Just cancel it out and you will get, see, you can do it any way you want, right? I just substituted here differently, there differently, but something is getting cancelled out, and finally you are getting omega 2 KC is equal to omega 3 OG. This is the case you are getting finally. But is KC and OG, so I feel that in a more better manner, how can we do it? Okay, in a more better manner, how can we do it? So what we do is we will join the centers, because the distance between the centers will never change, right? We are going to connect the centers of two shafts. See, I connected the center of two rotations. So they are intersecting at a point, right? So they are intersecting at a point at common normal, right? Yes. So this one. So this is called point of intersection of line joining the centers and common normal at the point of contact. This is the intersection. So can you see similar triangles here? Yes. What are the similar triangles? Similar triangles are, I'll just circle it out. O, G, C, K, C, and this P. If you consider all these points, you can see similar triangles. So I can write down omega 2 by omega 3 or omega 3 by omega 2. Any ratio, no problem. It is OC by KC, right? But OC by KC, is it OC by KC? Sorry, OG. Sorry, this is G. OG by KC. So I can write down, see guys, I can write down OG by KC is equal to, because they are similar triangles, OP by PC or CP. Can I write this down? Yes. Now what's the next thing? The next thing is I'll just erase some parts so that in this page itself we can clearly understand few things. From recording you can check if you wish to have an idea of what this is. Is it still constant? See, I got finally, I'll just write it down like omega 3 by omega 2 because previously we have written that. I'll just invert it CP by OP. Is it still constant or is it different? So we don't know if P point is constant or not. So what we said is if P remains in same position for motion, then we can achieve, what can we achieve? We can achieve same velocities along the common normal, okay, and which is desirable, and we can achieve constant angular velocity ratio, even though without having pure rolling. See, here there is no pure rolling, there is slipping. How can you check the slipping? See, the slipping is just this component. This component is slipping component. So this is component of V3, this is component of V2. The difference between the components will give you the slipping between these two surfaces. How are they sliding with respect to each other? So even though there is slipping, still we are going to get constant angular velocity ratio. It means for a fixed input, for example, input is 100, you are going to get output as 33.33 if it is 1:3 ratio. Fine. So that type of scenario, or if the ratio is 3, if your input is 100, you are going to get 300 rpm. If your input is 200, you are going to get 600 rpm. Means fixed input, fixed output. So for that, P should be fixed. For that, what? P should be fixed. So we are saying if P remains in the same position for motion, we'll get omega 3 by omega 2 to be equal to constant. Omega 3 by omega 2 will be equal to constant. Fine. So P should remain at the fixed point where the line joining the centers intersect the common normal at the point of contact. That point should be at a fixed point for any kind of rotation. Only then it is possible. So now we have to start searching for the gear where the surface is such that at any point of contact of the surface, P is lying in the same point. It is not changing. Okay, because see, C is a fixed point. C is a fixed point. It cannot change. O also is a fixed point. Now what C is fixed point, O is fixed point. If P is fixed, can we get constant value or not? Yes. So that's what our next aim is to achieve. And this is called as law of gearing. Okay. This is so important term that we gave it a name called law of gearing. Law of gearing or law of gears. Okay. So this topic is about law of gears. We have concluded the topic. What was the conclusion? The conclusion was that we can achieve that motion. We can achieve that motion only if the intersection, it means the common normal at the point of contact and the line joining the centers intersect at the same point for any kind of motion. So that's what we have concluded. With this, the derivation of law of gearing is completed. This is the derivation of law of gearing. Okay, thank you for listening. Kindly subscribe to the channel and leave your comments in the comment section. See you until the next video.